Good morning, everyone. It's supposed to get up to 102 today for the third day in a row, I believe. But this morning it's nice, calm, beautiful, and cool out. So I'm getting ready to tackle this big boy topiary in celebration of Topiary Month. This one, it's a Eugenia, has really just exploded. I would say that it is probably maybe 3 to 4 feet in diameter, and I definitely need to scale it down a little bit. This one over here is not so big, and it's got a shape that's a little bit wonky, but I may or may not do some work on it. So hope you guys enjoy this part 2 of our topiary playlist with different tips and tricks. Please comment below about any kind of topiary projects you are working on in this month of topiary. And as a happy coincidence, I noticed that Bunny Mellon, who I consider to be the queen, or was the queen of Myrtle Topiary, she celebrates her birthday. She would have been, I believe, 107 this coming Friday. And so I might do a little quick Instagram live, maybe, to toast her and celebrate. So if you get a notification on Instagram about that, you might want to hop on. No promises, but it might be kind of fun. So there you go. Enjoy the rest of this playlist, and I'm enjoying my sabbatical, and we'll be back before you know it. Today it's all about topiary, and I'm going to go through some different ways that you can establish topiary or buy topiary or create topiary. But first, I just want you to know that my studio outside is just an absolute mess. This is very behind the scenes QVC because Stuart and I did 3 QVC segments in one day. One was at 1 o'clock in the morning, the other one was at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the other one, last one was at 3 a.m. And anyhow, we were shuffling things back and forth, so this is all kind of chaotic in here, but I thought you'd kind of get a kick out of that because this is where, I don't do all of them, but I do a number of my QVC things. Okay, so today is about topiary, and what I am going to address and describe is more how to get started in topiary. And if you are interested in topiary, then you might, this is a little mini commercial, you might want to get one of my books because I do describe in here care and maintenance of topiary, how you create them, what plants make for good topiary, how I use them, and stage them at my house. So that's just a little heads up that, let me see what I dropped, Stuart. Oh, this is very fortuitous, because if you get one of my books, I think I have told you that I will send you a book plate, and I'll also sign it, and so this is the book plate that you get. So excuse me for, I think I said yesterday I have the dropsies. I think I have the dropsies again today, and Stuart will probably go, oh Nellie. Last week it was tickled pink, and this week it was, oh Nellie. And I said, Stuart, how old are you? He comes up with these expressions that people of my age and older typically use. So I don't know, are you channeling your past, your grandmother or something? Yeah, it wouldn't be a shooting day if I weren't making fun of Stuart. So let's talk about what kind of plants make for good topiary. And by the way, I've kind of got topiary on the brain. In general, I always have topiary on the brain, but in particular now, because I'm also writing an article for, I think it's the April or May issue of Garden Gate magazine on topiary. So that said, that's all the preliminaries out of the way. How do you make topiary? Well, number one, you can buy topiary already made. And I have done that, and especially when I want really large specimens, huge boxwood topiaries like the ones that are out in my yard, in my landscape. I have created them, but a lot of them I've also bought in that form. They can be expensive, yes, but to me it's like it's an investment piece, just like an investment piece of your wardrobe. I consider it to be part of my landscaping wardrobe because it makes such a difference and is one of the main signature touches that I employ in my own garden. So you can get them pre-made. You can look at independent nurseries. Sometimes you'll find them at garden centers. I sometimes will travel a distance to find one, or if you know someone who is a landscape architect or a landscaper, they may have access to different sources that you don't, so you can always ask them to be on the lookout for you. So that is one place where you can find really large specimens. The next place is just you can buy some pre-made from those same locations, garden centers, nurseries. I find them at Trader Joe's periodically, Whole Foods. Obviously, some of my better independent nurseries will carry them, sometimes florists. And those are typically going to be tabletop varieties. So they may be something like this, if you kind of move with me. I got this topiary, which is basically just a wreath form with plain old hedera or ivy along the wreath, the metal wreath form. I got this at Trader Joe's over the holidays. I got 2 of them. They are still doing just fine. They were very inexpensive at about, $10 to $12, and I love them, and I love them in 2s because they're great symmetry on your buffet, on your mantle, or maybe your dining table outdoors. So that's another way you can get them. Very obviously, you could also save, let's see if we can do a close-up here, Stuart. You could save the metal ring. Can you see that at all? Okay, the metal ring, which I have done many a time. If the plant dies, which they sometimes do, I save the metal ring, and then I can just buy a pot of ivy, and I can, with long tendrils, I can wind it around, and I've created my own ivy topiary. Typically, you'll find that around the holidays like Valentine's Day or Mother's Day or Easter or Christmas, if you're going to find them inexpensively at local sources like Home Depot or Trader Joe's, that's when you're going to find them, is around the holidays typically. So it's a good time to look for them. But obviously you can make them at almost any time of year. Now a few other types of plants that lend themselves to this instant topiary by training something around the form are things like angel vine, or also called wire vine, or muhlenbeckia. You could use something really that you could easily find, like Vinca major, or any kind of ivy, or Asian jasmine, anything like that that has long tendrils you can find to wind around this. A lot of times you'll also find things like jasmine, or even, I've even seen miniature roses in some ways used this way. So just don't be confined to any one type of material. If it has long branches, long canes, then you probably can make a circular form like this very, very, very easily. And I've often been intrigued about the prospect of maybe doing one that was really huge, a real huge living wreath, maybe around the holidays or something. So that is one form, and probably the easiest form is to train it over a shape. Now obviously there are different kinds of shape you can train them over. You can make your own with wire hangers. Lots of people do that. It's very easy to make a heart shape. You can even make global spherical shapes. One of my favorite things is probably this eggshell shape. This is one of the things that's in my QVC collection. This is an egg-shaped, I think of it as an obelisk or a tutor, and it's just a plant form, and this demonstrates for you what it looks like when you just take an ivy, stick a form into it, and then you start winding and training the tendrils around the form. I'm not sure, I think these might be all sold out, but you might check my QVC line. These are really beautiful, and the nice thing about some of these more elevated, fancy
wire forms is that they look beautiful regardless of whether or not they have any kind of plant material growing on them, because they're just inherently beautiful. And then I've got it sitting in one of my smaller Kobo baskets. So that is another way, that's another way that you can do it. Probably one of my favorite ways, and ones that I think you guys have told me that you do a lot of, and that leads me to my question of the day. First of all, do you guys do topiary? And maybe was some of it inspired by this vlog? But also, if you do topiary, how do you start them? Do you start them with a wire form like that, which might be one of the easiest ways, excuse me, or do you do this type of topiary creation? So one of my favorite things to do, and this is, I love this because it's just really thrifty and frugal and kind of cheap, and that is I will look at the end of the year or even the beginning of the season for 1 gallon plants. They could be larger than that. They could be 3 gallon, 5 gallon. But they're not symmetrical. They've got kind of a wonky shape. They may not be full and fleshed out. They're usually disregarded by other people who don't see their topiary potential. And oftentimes at the end of the season, they will be on sale. And I believe this is how I created this topiary, which definitely needs some trimming. But what I looked for, and this is just a typical boxwood, you could look for euonymus, you could look for really any type of shrub, privet. This one, what I look for is just something that has a strong central vertical stem. And this definitely had that, and then I could shape it accordingly and have it grow up and into place. And I have done this with junipers, I have done this with all sorts of evergreens, but you basically just get a 1 gallon plant from the nursery. And by the way, Stuart, I think let's put up a link to the topiary playlist, because there's a playlist of all of my past vlogs where I show how to shape them and how to transform just a shrub into a topiary. So that content has already been created, but that's another way. Again, you can look for different forms. For example, this is kind of a classic form that you might see in your nurseries, and that's just this very tall, pointed, conical shape. A lot of times it will be an arbor vitae, it'll be some kind of evergreen. This is a lemon cypress that we just love. That in my zone can be kind of temperamental. It doesn't really like our heat, but nevertheless, for periods of time, I will grow them. This was actually a start that my friend Monica cultivated and raised to maturity. She can still take cuttings off of this, and she has done that. Stuart, I'm going to go over here and shut this. We've got a little bit of a breeze today, you guys. The weather has been so wacky. That's the door that goes out. Let's give them a little peek into the out of doors. That goes out into the garden. But this is a traditional form that you can find just about anywhere. And a lot of times you will see them and they have the hint of this shape. They have sometimes they'll be very tightly clipped, but most of the time they're a little bit fluffy and they don't have the strong architectural form that I at least so much look for in a topiary. So in that case, then you get them and you clip them, and they look great in pots. They look great in the ground. They are often very inexpensive, and it's a fun thing to do. In the Southern Living plant collection, I like to use pancake arborvitaes. I also like to use their fire chief arborvitaes. There's a lot of different kinds of evergreens that you can use. So again, don't be confined to any one type of plant material. Just let your imagination go wild and just look for potential. You can see here that I've got some other tiny little boxwoods. This is a start. This one was a case of being observant. So when I trim my boxwood in the spring, sometimes pieces fall to the earth, particularly if it's in an area that stays wet and kind of soggy. and it will root in place, and then I identify it and I dig it up and I turn it into a small starter topiary. But you can also obviously take cuttings, and in the topiary playlist I believe there is one where Monica shows us how to take cuttings and transform them into topiary. So definitely you will want to reference that and check those out. I've talked about this form of topiary acquisition many times, and it may be, each thing is my favorite, but this might really be my favorite because it is just turning something, nothing into something. This is a cherry laurel that I dug up from the yard. The birds planted it. I didn't even know what it was originally when it came up. I just noticed that it had that telltale strong leader or strong central stem that was rather straight and that I could train with just a little post, a little dowel here. And so I did that. And this one you can see, I don't know, Stuart, can you tell that this is loosely starting to acquire a double ball form? I have played with the idea of just making it be a single ball form, but I think over time I am going to let it grow into a double ball form. Now it is starting to put on new growth, and I anticipate by the end of the season that it will be much thicker and much fuller. Now Stuart, if we can do an up close, let me see if we can get a visual on this. Now the reason that you prune topiary very frequently, especially during the growing season, is because when you trim it, it forces out interior growth. So can you see that, Stuart? That there's a little bud there right at the intersection of the stem and the leaf. You can see right there. There's also one there at the top. And what that will do is it will increase the thickness, the density, and the bushiness of the shape that I am establishing by cutting off the terminal ends. And again, I'm not going to go into that in great detail, but it's something that's in my book, and it's also in some of the previous segments that we have done, previous vlogs that we have done. I've got 2 of these. I've also seen some candidates out in my yard, and it's funny, you guys, because this is proven to be one of my favorite plants to use as topiary, partly because it's just free and I just dug it up, but also because what I love about it is it's got the kind of glossy foliage that I like, but the leaf form is a little bit larger, and it makes a wonderful size and textural contrast to my other topiaries, like my boxwood and like this compacta myrtle. So they create a great synergy, and I love the way they look. Plus it has that kind of glossy foliage. So again, be observant, be open-minded about anything you see growing in your garden. I have done many before where I've dug up little trees, little conifers, and made miniature Christmas trees. It's such a fun thing to do with your kiddos, but also it's a way to get a very elevated, what I sometimes believe we think of as a sophisticated way to garden with these beautiful topiaries, but it does not have to be. You can find all sorts of plant material in your yard or in a friend's yard. I think we have that sometimes misconception that it's really expensive because you can't pick up a high-end shelter magazine, whether it's Veranda, Architectural Digest, I don't care what kind of shelter magazine it is, Domino, any of them, without seeing topiary inside used in the interior. And I think that's sometimes why we think they're expensive. Now, while you can create them very inexpensively, you can also spend some money on them. And where I invest my money in topiary is typically in compacta dwarf myrtles, or myrtle communis, whatever it is, however you pronounce it. And these I have found in a number of different places, but typically I have to find these and source them at like someplace in Dallas, or there's a wonderful place in New York City called New York Topiary. And then typically when I'm getting the mail order, I buy them from a store up in Michigan from my friend Angie called Passiflora Kalamazoo, and that's where some of these have come from. I also have my friend Monica who can create a start out of any type of cutting. And because I don't have a greenhouse, she will start cuttings from me from these myrtles. And I have talked about them before. This is a little bit different shape. Here is the classic and probably my favorite shape, which is just the lollipop shape, which is a globe on a straight standard form. These are also, by the way, the nomenclature is a little bit different, and these are also called, you might see rose on standard, where there'll be a rose that's been topiaried on a strong central, strong trunk. That is called a standard. Another form that I'm interested in that I've been working on, and this one definitely is ready to go out in the sun because the growth is starting to get kind of leggy. But I'm also really interested in creating myrtles out of this tall, very slender conical form. I've done them with rosemary, I've done them with different kind of herbs, and these are just, you know, even though we think of maybe topiary as an indoor plant, particularly tabletop topiary, say that 3 times fast. Oh, Nellie. Oh, Nellie Stewart, say that 3 times fast. They really want to be outside. Even the myrtles, they really want to be outside, and they can suffer when you bring them indoors with the lower humidity and the dry air. So if you are going to lose a topiary, that is a high risk period, is in the winter time when they just have trouble adapting. And I just consider that as the cost of doing business, the cost of growing topiary, that I will lose a number of them during the winter, but I always have enough to sustain me into the growing season. And I've got some smaller ones here that are being trained into interesting shapes. This one over here is a really fun one, and I don't know why, but I think of it as my Peter Pan topiary. This is that compacta myrtle, and I think of it as a Peter Pan topiary because this reminded me of what is on a pirate ship, the sailing infrastructure of the sail of a pirate ship. And so I just trained some of these to go lateral, and I trained these along just some really thin supports, that stakes that I got that actually probably came from some of my, you know, I hardly ever throw away anything that still has utility, and these probably came from some small orchids that I have had in the past. So this is kind of an unusual shaped one. And then this one here, you can see, is kind of an ugly teenager, and it is growing up hopefully to be a beautiful adult. And this one I just trained for that Garden Gate magazine article that I am doing to show how you get it started. It was growing laterally, and then I just trained it up a post. Now, some of the things that you might need, and Stuart, let's put all these links in the description below. We'll put, sometimes depending on what form you are seeing it on, whether it's your phone, your laptop, your iPad, you may or may not see the links above, but I always put them below in the description box, and also on my Instagram account in stories, we supply the link, and if you can't find it, just shoot us a comment and we definitely will provide you the link. But some of the starter things that I like to have on hand when I start working with topiary are, number one, obviously some kind of plant material, and it lets your imagination go crazy. I like to have some really good snips, and I have used different kinds over the years. Sometimes I just use basic scissors, but these are probably my favorite ones. These are Joyce Chen. I like them because they have just such fine tips that you can do really detailed work and detailed cutting. And I'll put a link to these. You can get these off of Amazon. I really like these. I also typically have, I like these little tiny whisk brooms, and I will keep these in my garden truck, or I've got one in my kitchen so I can kind of clean up the snips that fall all over the place. And then this time of year, I find this absolutely indispensable. And that is some kind, and you could use Miracle Grow or some other kind of liquid fertilizer, but I like to use the Espoma products, or I'm also trying another organic liquid fertilizer. And at a very, very weak strength Right now, I am starting to fertilize my topiary so that they will start putting out growth that I can start trimming into shape. I'm not going to aggressively feed them right now because we've still got a lot of winter left, but I do want them to start putting on growth along with the longer days, because even though they're indoors, there's more sunlight coming in as the days increase. So I'm doing that with pretty much all of my topiaries, particularly my indoor topiaries right now. So that's what I like to have on hand. Also, one thing that I have found is it's just pretty much easier, not necessarily always attractive when you're not using them to style something, but just more as a hobby. I like having trays that you can set them in. I got these plastic faux terracotta trays. I got these off of Amazon, and they're really good because then to keep them watered, I can just pour water into the tray and it hydrates them from the bottom up. And the other thing that it does is start encouraging the growth of that wonderful mossy patina that I like so much. So that's good. The other thing is myrtle topiary, unlike most plants, they don't mind standing in water. So I don't worry too much about them getting harmed by sitting in water for a while. You can hardly overwater these dwarf compacta myrtles. You can, however, really underwater them. And once they've been underwatered or they have suffered, they're just kind of a goner, and they can be a little bit temperamental that way. If you're not already following my friend Loy on Instagram, he lives in Maryland and in Maine, and he has some fabulous huge myrtle topiary, and that's what I'm going for this year. In my motivation to look a little less cluttered, I'm going for fewer topiary but much larger topiary, and that's been kind of fun because what I've done is take some of my smaller ones and plant them all together so that it will create one large form. So there's just a little bit of a kind of an overview of topiary, not a lot of intense detail on trimming, but hopefully it will help encourage you to start your own topiary and just be creative, because boy, it will really get your creative juices going. So Stuart, have I forgotten anything? So again, don't forget to answer the question of the day below. Do you do topiary? What kind of plant material do you like to use? And let me know your thoughts on that. So there you go, topiary talk for today. Well, here's your fashion epilogue for today. It's kind of a fun one, a little bit different. I'm shaking it up a little bit. So it's about 59 out, Stuart, I think, and that's the high for today. Right now it's not quite that warm. So it's all about layering, putting on one layer over another so you can kind of discard what is getting a little too warm throughout the day. So my top is a poncho that I got. I can't remember where I got it. It was from a friend of mine who was doing a clothing line that you sell out of your house, and I bought it at that, and I really like it because it's a great shawl. It's good to kind of, if you're just sitting in front of the fireplace, it's got kind of a blanket quality. So I really like that, but I anticipate that later today it's going to get too warm for that. So I just have a sweater underneath this. I think you saw earlier in the week. This is thrifted from Goodwill. It's a Banana Republic sweater, and I like it. It's kind of part shrug, part cardigan. Now this is kind of a fun thing. I love graphic tees. I think Stuart kind of does too. And 99% of my graphic tees I get at Goodwill or thrifted, but a friend of mine called and said that she was at Old Navy and that they had a whole bunch of really fun graphic tees that are kind of Earth Day related, things like that. So I got this one there, Keep It Wild. My hubs really liked this one, and mostly I like them because these are a good shape. So like I say, I hadn't been in Old Navy in forever and a day, but I went in there and I actually bought several of them. They were like $6 or something, and they're 100% cotton. So they're great for layering, and if you really like graphic tees that you can wear under cardigans and blazers or by themselves, they're a fun thing. So uncharacteristically, I stocked up on a number of them, and they did not come thrifted. So this is a really fun thing for you guys today. So there's a little story behind this bracelet in particular. So, and you can see I've got other ones along with it. So I was at the farmer's market in Aspen, Colorado years ago, and there was a woman there who was so uber and effortlessly chic. I just loved her whole look, and she was selling jewelry, and her jewelry was beautiful, but what I really loved was the bracelet she had on, and it looked just like this. And I said, well, I love your stuff. I picked out a couple of pieces, and I said, but I really would love to buy your bracelet. I said, is that a piece that she made? And here is the surprise that she revealed to me. This is not a bracelet, so let me disassemble this. This is not a bracelet. This is 3 elastic ties that run together that I have just kind of wrapped one around the other, as she did, to make this really wonderful bracelet. I asked her where she got them. She was very generous in supplying the information. She got them at Walmart, so I made a beeline to Walmart to get these 3 individual, what are these called, you guys? They're not scrunchies, hair ties, whatever. But I just love them, and I love the fact that you can kind of put them together any way that you like. And then I just layered them with some other just elastic bracelets that I have, and they can look really elegant. They can look kind of boho chic, and of course I just have lots of these inexpensive bangles that comes together for a really pretty ensemble. Don't look at my owie, but a really pretty ensemble. This ring I got in Amelia Island. My sister and I both bought one simultaneously so that when we put it on we can think of each other. And yes, I actually do have a manicure because Stuart and I did tons of QVC last week, and my previous manicure had just been destroyed. My little belt, by the way, I'm going to ask you guys a question. I really like colorful belts, little belts like this, preferably in leather, and I'm having trouble finding some. I would really like a really good red leather belt. If you guys have any ideas for where I could source those, please let me know. This is an orange one, and I really like it. My breeches are from H&M, and they were a gift to me from my daughter-in-law and son at Christmas time. And my booties, I think these came from Nordstrom Rack. I can't really remember. I've had them for years. I do have a question of the day for you guys on this outfit du jour, and that is, again, no right answer, no wrong answer. I am just curious about what your feelings are on them. But my mother-in-law really did not like it when we gals would wear ripped jeans, and maybe especially if you were an older gal like me, she just kind of didn't think it was appropriate, maybe not ladylike. And I know there's a whole different theory about that. I am somebody that I just kind of like it. I like the texture of it, and I like the additional little, again, textural element, I guess, that it gives to a pair of breeches. But again, there's no right or wrong answer. I am just curious, do you guys wear jeans that have tears in them? And if you do you think that there should be an age cutoff for that? If at a certain point we're too old to wear them, or if they're just something that should be relegated to the young? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. Stuart is laughing. Is laughing at me. So there you go. There is your outfit question of the day and your outfit du jour. Well, good morning, everybody. I am at the potting bench. I have all sorts of potting to do today. But first I wanted to kind of share with you a little bit about my methodology. In the spring, I want more. I want more of everything. I want more potted plants. I want more flowers. I want more shrubs. I want more of everything. Well, now that the temperatures have just skyrocketed, I don't want more of everything anymore. I'm really trying to congregate a bunch of the smaller plants into larger pots. I need to do a lot of upsizing for plants that are in smaller pots that need to go in larger pots. which happily will mean I don't have to water them as much because the larger pots will be able to hold more moisture. So I've got a lot of that going on right now, and let me kind of share with you how I think through the process. Because I don't want to go out and buy a bunch of larger pots that I don't need. So I find that what this is kind of staggered planting, or I think of it as domino planting. So let me start out with the very first one that needs to be repotted. So I've got this gorgeous rosemary topiary right here, and you can see this root ball. It's compressed. It needs to be loosened up, and for this plant to thrive, which is so often the problem with topiaries, you get them, they're pot bound and they need to be repotted. But this one used to be in this pot right here, okay? So here's what I mean about the domino effect. So I'll repot this one, and then this one will go in this pot, because this one also needs a larger pot and needs to be upscaled, because I want this to get really large, hopefully for Christmas. Then this little baby one over here is going to get upscaled into this pot. This pot right here, this double ball rosemary, which started from a little sprig, and on LVTV we did a deep dive into starting rooted cuttings from your own garden and transforming them into topiary, and we really did a deep dive on that, not just a cursory little overview of it. So this is going to be put into this much prettier pot right here, and then this gorgeous reminds me of an olive urn. I got this from White Flower Farm years ago. It is one of my treasured pots. It too has a double ball rosemary in it, but it's getting a little too confined, so it's going to go in a larger pot. Now, one thing to note is that, let me go back behind here now. One thing to note is that I pay attention to what kind of pots they're going into, not only in terms of size, but also in terms of what kind of pot they are. In other words, terracotta or something that looks like stone, because often I want the groupings of plants, like all of these rosemary plants, to all harmonize with one another. So let me get a couple of these things out of the way so I have a little bit more work surface. And by the way, this juniper is going to get replanted into this pot, so I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay, now one thing I always like to have on hand, and I'll put a link to this below, is Osmocote. Osmocote is both for outdoor and indoor plants, and basically it is a long-acting fertilizer. So you can put it in. It really makes a tremendous difference in the health and the growth of the plant, and I always try to incorporate some of this into the new fresh potting soil that I use when I am potting something up. If you are a new gardener, then this would be a good video for you to watch, because I think it's just instructive in terms of one of the most basic planting skills, basic gardening skills, and that is how do you just safely and effectively repot a plant. So number one, as always, I have top dressed this in gravel. So I'm just going to slough off that gravel. It will fall to the bottom where I've got some broken clay shards for drainage, and that's great. Now I'm going to take my hands, my thumb, and I am just going to really roughen up this root ball. See how congested that is? So not only do these roots grow in a circle and are unable to penetrate the soil, but also, I just watered this yesterday, and look at how dry that is. It also then can't hold on to moisture, which does two things. It makes the plant suffer, and it makes you a slave to watering. So that's why this time of year, I really notice that this needs to be done. It would help if I had something, sometimes I'll use a pick or whatever, to kind of liberate those roots. This will make this plant so much happier. And when you buy a topiary that is already in a topiary form, typically this is what it looks like. You'll get it in a pot. It will be so root bound that it genuinely and frequently, it pretty much really needs to be repotted almost immediately, which we seldom do. We plot them in a pretty cachepot or whatever, and then we just enjoy them. And I am very guilty of doing that myself, especially around the holidays. But typically they need to be repotted almost immediately. So I've got that in place there. I'll make it stand up and fly right here momentarily. So I have some potting mix here. And you all always ask, so what kind of potting mix do I use? Well, basically, I never use garden soil. I always use a potting blend. And really, use whatever potting blend you like as long as it's a good quality potting blend. For me, what that means is when I need some more fresh new dirt, or fresh new potting soil, and this is just an all-purpose potting soil. I think this might be Scott's. I'm not as concerned about it being organic, though you can find organic potting soils, because this stuff isn't in the ground. This is just potting soil that's going to go into a pot. And I like the convenience of just being able to purchase whatever potting soil I can easily find, or probably more realistically, what Hubs can find, because that's how he helps me in the garden. He gets my gravel and he gets my potting soil. So I've got this in place, and all I'm going to do is just basically fill in the surround and kind of tuck it down in there. Now you'll notice that, let me squish that down a little bit, the top of the root ball is just slightly below the rim of the pot. Typically, I like to do about 1 inch or ½ an inch. That's so it can accommodate gravel or whatever I'm using to mulch the top of the plant, which also keeps it moist and keeps the moisture in. So I'm just going to tuck that down in here. Now there's another really cool way that I can show you for potting up and transplanting and upsizing plants, but I'll show you that later. Now, I've got some of this Osmocote, and you can read the directions of approximately how much you put in. But I have found that I really can't, I think, over fertilize it with this because, and some of you may have different experiences, but because this is a slow release. So then I'm mixing it into the surrounding soil. Now at this point, I will often really water it in to get this soil to settle. But because I'm not near my hose, I'll do that. I will do that at another time. I'll water it in really well. So, and always try to make them stand up and fly right. A lot of that can be helped by just where you really tuck in the potting soil. Another thing you can do is if your potting soil is really, really dry, hydrate the potting soil first. In other words, moisten it in your container before you even put it in. Okay, so there you can see that I've got this guy done. It went very, very quickly, smells beautiful, and now I have not only a beautiful plant, but one that is much more dramatic, makes much more of an impact because it's in a larger pot. And this time of year, I'm wanting not a lot of small pots, I'm wanting fewer larger pots. Okay, so there is number one, and later I'll top dress this with gravel. Why do I top dress with gravel? Because I like the way it looks. I like the fact that it keeps squirrels out and it keeps moisture in. And it is so thrilling for me on Instagram, everywhere, on YouTube. I see that people are doing the same things. They're starting to mulch their pots with gravel. It's just a wonderful idea, and it looks so neat and tidy. And whenever this time of year when the garden starts looking really unkept, it's nice to be able to kind of just tidy things up, and a way to do that is putting a fresh layer of gravel on your plants. Okay, so that's number one. I'll move it out of the way. Okay, number two, potting on. Isn't this pot pretty? It's a beautiful terracotta pot, and I get my pots from everywhere. I am not, I guess, really loyal to any one place. I get them absolutely everywhere. Now, I have in this pot here, I've kind of got some leafy debris and stuff that I'm going to put at the bottom of this pot. A lot of times, instead of drainage, here's something else I do, you guys. Instead of putting like a terracotta broken shard or gravel or anything, I'll just take something like this. This is some Acuba japonica leaves that I pruned off, and I put those at the bottom, and that too will keep the soil in, give me a little additional drainage. But I really want as much depth of growing area as I can get for this. So I'm going to tuck that in. It will break down over time, feed the plant, and I can then oil, and it will also kind of squish down and give me room at the top to top dress the plant later on over the years. So this one, as you can see, it's been growing in a rather shallow container, but the diameter of the pot is about the same. So what I'm going to have to do to get it to the level of the top of the pot is just add more soil. Okay, so I'm not paying attention. Stuart, did I already put in some Osmocote? No. Okay, so I'm going to put in a little bit of Osmocote. Stuart's here to keep me honest. Stuart, how long have you and I known each other? 3 years, 4 years. Met through a friend, immediately hit it off. Okay, so here I'm going to watch out for flying gravel. I love the sound of gravel. It's one of the many reasons I love it. In fact, I think it was on Instagram, and if you're not following me there, you might want to. I just did a post on my love affair with gravel, and it talks all about why I am so enamored and smitten by gravel. So there you can see I'm loosening up the root ball a little bit. I'm going to come back in here. And one thing you can do, if I was nearby my hose, I would, after I put this surrounding potting soil in, I would water it until I started to see air bubbles coming up around the circumference. And then when I didn't see air bubbles anymore, then I would know that there were no air pockets. You don't want air pockets because then there'll be a void, and you don't want those roots to start growing into a void and dropping out. Okay, Stuart, you know what? I'm going to go get some water. Give them a little tour of the potting bench, and I'll be right back. This, you guys, is some water that I've been saving in a bucket because it's rainwater, and plants always like rainwater better than tap water. So this guy is not quite straight enough. So this is a real moment of opportunity to get your little guys straight, is when you're potting them up. if you drink Folgers coffee, they are just wonderful in the garden for a number of different reasons. In this case, I'm just using it to be able to water my plants. So this one, I've got it packed pretty well. I really don't see any air bubbles coming up, but I'll probably water it till I kind of see anything coming out the bottom. Now another thing you can do to save yourself time, because this is stair-step gardening after all, or stair-step potting, is sometimes I'll do this and I'll take what's on top from one pot and just transfer it to the other pot, because this is the rosemary I'm going to repot next. So I don't even have to go to the gravel bin. What I need is to have another filled container with just gravel in it, but I'm kind of surface area challenged here. So now, doesn't that look pretty? Pretty, pretty, pretty. And it will make a nice sibling for the other rosemary that I've already repotted. Okay, so now let's move that guy out of the way. So Stuart, was that the second one? I'll do one more because I think you guys are getting the idea. Move this guy. Now, as I said earlier, this one I want to show you because it's a little bit different. So I got this. This was one that was already purchased in this form. It was in, I love this Italian terracotta clay. It's beautiful. It was on this wreath form. And by the way, you guys, if you get something like this and the plant ever dies, just take off the dead foliage and the dead vining and then save the ring, because it will be invaluable to you later when you start creating your own. Now this cachepot, and where did I get this? I think I maybe got this at Michael's several years ago. You'll note it doesn't have drainage. Now, I could drill a hole in the bottom, but then that would prevent me from ever using it as a vase or in any way where I wanted it to remain watertight. So I'm not going to do that. The other thing is, sometimes, I'm sure if you're a very experienced ceramic driller, it wouldn't be a problem, but I am not. And sometimes when I've tried to do that, I actually crack the container. So an easier solution is to just get a plastic pot that fits in here beautifully. You can see this fits in here just very easily, and use that instead. That way when I water it, I can just take it out and drainage isn't a problem, because 99% of the time you always want to have drainage in your containers. A lot of times if you're, when I first started out with houseplants years ago, that was something I didn't realize, the importance of drainage. So especially if you're starting out with succulents or some other small plants, house plants, drainage is all important. So I'm going to take this one. I'm going to try to remove it from this pot. And sometimes if you have a hard time extricating it from its container, then I suggest you give it just a little wrap on grass, not on concrete, or you'll break the pot. This one is just a little bit taller than the height of this pot. So I'm going to loosen up the root ball at the bottom. Sometimes I will even completely tear off the root ball at the bottom, because what I want it to do is produce new, young, fleshy roots. Okay. And you don't really, I don't think you need to be quite as, you just don't need to be all that tender, I don't think, when you're potting up plants. I mean, obviously you don't want to be overly aggressive, but you want to be aggressive enough so that you get the results you want. So it's one of those cases where just the right amount of aggression is a good thing. So it's in there. Now I'm just going to fill it. And again, you guys, I will put a link to this Osmocote. I know you guys are going to ask me what this plant is, so before I forget, it is Muhlenbeckia, M-U-H-L-E-N-B-E-C-K-I-A, also known as angel vine, typically when you're buying it in topiary form from websites, or wire vine. And if you mulch it, it will be hardy outside, though typically when it gets really cold, I bring this guy in. And I've got some pots that are just nothing but this Muhlenbeckia, and they're beautiful too. They really can handle both sun and shade. It looks beautiful in a composition planting with some seasonal color or other type of leaf textures. So this one, unlike these that I mulch in gravel, this one I will either not mulch at all, or I might mulch it later with a little bit of moss. Why? Because I don't want, you can tell I know this from experience, when I put it in here, I don't want any of these little rock, these little pebbles to come between the liner and the pot, because sometimes they get wedged and it's hard for me to get them out. So, voila, there you go. This would be very pretty, I think, top dressed with some moss, something pretty. If I wanted to elevate it a little bit more, I could put some plastic down at the bottom or a little bit of newspaper, but it fits into this pot just beautifully. Again, never waste good garden muck. I always take my dirty garden gloves and rub them across the surface to age the pot. And there you go, domino planting of potted plants in your late summer garden. Thanks for helping me. Well, tomorrow I'm going to show you a lot of what I call staggered potting or domino potting, where I take something from a smaller pot and transplant it into a larger pot across the garden. But today I wanted to show you a couple of things that really make repotting and topiary care a lot easier. These are no-brainer things. I'm sure you guys are going to think, oh my gosh, why didn't she think of that earlier? That is such a duh kind of thing. But sometimes the obvious escapes me. So here's a couple of things you can have on hand that I think will really help make your life a little bit simpler. So if you started getting into topiary, I highly recommend you get just an inexpensive Lazy Susan, or just use one you've already got. That way, when you're pruning your topiaries or in flower arranging where you want it to look good all the way around, you can just twirl it on your Lazy Susan instead of constantly picking up the pot and moving it. So that's number one, and I'll try to find one and put a link below on Amazon. I think I got this one off of Amazon. The second thing is whether or not I want to prune my topiary before I upsize it. So I'm going to upsize it into this slightly larger pot, because this is the time of year that rosemary is putting on its really active growth. And I want to take advantage of that to my greatest ability to do so. So I'm going to transplant it now while it's in its rigorous growth stage. It will put out both root and top growth, because I want it to really enlarge in size in both height and in girth. I want a collection of fairly large rosemaries instead of just these tabletop ones. This was started from a cutting quite a while back. On LVTV, we just did a deep dive into the most effective way to root cuttings. It's more than just kind of a cursory stick it in some rooting hormone and put it in some soilless mix. This is a real deep dive into how to be very effective about it. But enough of that. Let's start out with clipping this. Now, you're going to surely ask me what my favorite clippers are, and these are Joyce Chen clippers. I don't know, Stuart, if you can, it's got the name engraved on it. I get these off of Amazon. These are my favorite topiary clippers for the same reasons that those Barnell pruners are my favorite pruners. They're very sharp, they're very exacting, and they have long pointy tips where I can really get into the interior of the plant or do some very fine clipping. Now, could you use a regular pair of scissors? Yes, but I do so much clipping on topiaries like these myrtles, and I want to be very exacting sometimes. So that's why I like these. They're very sharp, they're just wonderful. So I'm going to clip this before I put it into the new pot, and I'm doing that because I of course will top dress it with gravel. I don't want all of those clippings to fall into the gravel. And also how I clip it will slightly transform the shape of the plant itself and how straight it appears on the stem. And when I transplant it, that's an opportunity for me to straighten it as much as possible. So I'm going to be a little bit aggressive about pruning, because I really want this to be a tight ball form at the top. I'm getting really interested in other shapes of topiary that I will reveal later, but this is just a classic double ball or double poodle topiary form. And to clean it up, I'm going to remove some of this growth, leafy growth that's coming off of the stem. A lot of times, to make it look happier, if you take off some of the downward growing foliage, it tends to be older. Sometimes it might have been a little buggy. It sometimes has discolored. And that's a way also to clean up your topiary, not just cutting from the top, but also cutting from the bottom. So I'm doing that here. You can see it's decidedly not straight. This is my chance to make it fly right. So I'm doing that. Okay, now I have mentioned before, but I'll mention it again because it's one of my favorite things. This is a special terracotta pot. I got it years ago from White Flower Farm. I'm not really sure if they're still available, but I will check, and if they are, I will put a link to it. Because a lot of my pots, you all are always asking me, where do I get my pots? I get them from everywhere. I am an equal opportunity shopper of pots. I get them everywhere at every price point, including plastic that you've seen me transform. But periodically, I really like to have some that are very, very special. And especially as I'm getting into Mediterranean plants, anything that evokes the Mediterranean is really important to me. So this one is a little bit pot bound. And one thing I have noticed, you all, anytime you grow something in a pot that becomes slightly narrower at the top versus one that is slightly broader at the top from the bottom, it's much more difficult to get them out. And it's because of how it transforms itself, the root ball, to conform to the shape of the pot. So I'm going to water this a little bit more, and then I'm going to very gently wrap this on the grass. So that loosened it. Get it out. Okay, so now let me check where this is going to be relative. You can see I've already at the bottom, I've put in a little bit of soil And actually you can't see it, but I've already put in a little bit of Osmocote, a long-term slow release fertilizer. It's those little tiny spheres you often see in plants. And I will put a link to that as well. So this is what I mean when I say that I've got the opportunity to make it stand up and fly right, because I do spend so much time straightening my pots. I love it. I think, was it Jean or Mary, one of our little community here commented that her OCD was kicking in and one of the finials on the garden posts weren't straight, and would I please straighten it? And she said it very sweetly. And she is a gal after my own heart, because I promise you, it would have bothered me as much as her. I love the exacting nature that she has. So thank you for that. I love those kind of comments. So I am now filling this in. Sometimes, because of the shape of the root ball, it's hard to get it to be exactly centered in the pot. That doesn't bother me so much as it growing straight does. So I want things to be kind of perfectly imperfect. I've got a little bit of rainwater here. These empty Folgers cans are great. Now see, this is a reason that you want, notice how it's straight from one angle, but it's not straight from the other angle. Stuart, can you see that? Okay, so I ideally want it to be straight from all angles. So I'm just gonna reposition it a little bit. Is that more straight now, Stuart? Okay, Stuart's shaking his head. The mysterious Stuart is shaking his head. Okay. Now, I think that looks pretty straight. I will give it another good water after I top dress it with my beloved gravel. Fortunately, I've clipped it beforehand. Why do I use gravel? Say it along with me. Because I like the way it looks. It keeps squirrels out and moisture in. And then I'll press that down. I like, Stuart, if you can show everyone, I like to have a little bit of clearance at the top of about at least ½ an inch, so that when I water, nothing escapes. And while it's still fresh and it's not root bound, I can, over the next few days, continue to straighten it if I need to. So there are some very obvious things that make your job easier. Again, I'll put a link to these Joyce Chin clippers below. Some of you guys ask about where I get these, and these you can get at farm supply stores apparently. They're feed scoops, and I think I can also put a link to one of these, because for my gravel, I love it. It makes it so easy to top dress my plants. If you have clipped later, I have found just a gentle blow over the surface of the gravel will remove any of those little tidbits. This is sadly COVID country now, so make sure that you're not blowing onto anybody standing on the other side of your potting bench. So there you go, guys. Have a great day, and thanks for helping me at the potting bench. Well, what a treat for both you and me today, because I'm at Southwood Landscape and Garden Center here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I believe it's 925 South Lewis. You can look it up. And it is just a wonderland of plants and container planting, or pots, container plantings that are already composed, bird baths, all sorts of statuary, topiaries. I mean, it's just almost overwhelming. There is just so much to see here. But starting out as I am here in the topiary section, or at least one variety of topiary, and that is boxwood. Now, I am often asked, how long does it take to grow, to tend, to start, and to maintain a large boxwood topiary like this? And obviously, if you're growing it yourself from a start, it can take a very long time. So some of them that I have bought already pre-shaped and in full maturity. Now you do pay for that, but in my mind, they are almost like architecture for the garden. They're almost like a piece of furniture for the garden. And to me, it's worth the investment. So here I've got some boxwoods. There's a couple of double trunks, some single trunks, probably at other locations here at the nursery. There are different shapes, but this area is kind of the boxwood area. But speaking of a way to add instant form and architectural interest and good bones to your garden, I am very enamored with all of these wrought iron panels. You don't even have to have them custom made. Just come with your measurements. They're already done, and you talk about something that looks good in 4 seasons. And that is a really beautiful support for your climbing roses, for maybe grapevine, for whatever it is you choose to grow on them, any kind of espalier. They're absolutely wonderful. And these aren't things you can find just everywhere. But here at Southwood, they have a good variety of them. And like I say, it is just amazing here. Not only is the plant material incredible, but look at this tree here. I mean, just really spectacular. It's in a beautiful, beautiful setting. So it's almost like pack a picnic, come here and plan to spend the day. There is so much to see. So here are some boxwood topiary, and then Stuart, I'll quit talking because we're working without a mic today since we're in an enclosed area. But if you don't mind kind of doing a sweep, and you can see some colonnade hollies, Japanese maples.
They can still hear you now.
Yeah, can you still hear me? And then also it's a topiary form though, albeit a very simple one, that classic Christmas tree shape. And then here is a perfect example like me. They've got over here, they've got Boston ivy that is growing on this wall here, and they've just clipped it off very tidily right along the brick line.
Yeah, that's what I need to do on mine.
It's a good way to have something that looks a little bit wild to tame it and make it look more tailored. Part of what I'm going to dub the new formalism, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more. So let's come this way and I'll show you some things that are also really fascinating to me. Okay, I don't know anyone who doesn't love Japanese maples. I think that they are just, there's something very primal about them that appeals to all of us, especially a lot of these that are cut leaf. This one's called baby lace. This one is, I bet this is maybe a crimson queen. But there are so many different varieties of Japanese maples. However, I am always very cautious about buying them, even for container plantings, because it gets so hot in Oklahoma City. It's a little bit more temperate up here in Tulsa. They get more rain. It's a little bit more, the soil is a little bit better. But nevertheless, they have a whole selection of different kinds of absolutely stunning, some in weeping form, in various colors that are just spectacular. I love the shape of these over here. Verity, this is a lacy weeping form. But again, if you just wanted some, if you didn't want to start out large, you just wanted to start out conservatively, these would make beautiful, really exquisite container plantings. I just love these. And the form that I am really obsessed with right now is this very tall, slender stem with a smaller head on top. And that's exactly what's happening here, like with this baby lace Japanese maple and some of these others. But I spied it in some different kinds of plant materials. So Stuart, let's move on and see if I can find that shape in other places. Now, I'm most drawn to evergreen topiary forms, but over, at Southwoods, there are so many different kind of flowering shrubs and plants that they have sculpted already into topiary form, like some of these Rose of Sharon's. And I just love this Morning Star. This is a tree form, Rose of Sharon. I love the white. And not only do I love it, because I'm just drawn to this form, but also I love it because it reminds me of some neighbors of mine that had 2 of these that were absolutely fabulous by their pool. So Stuart, let's just keep walking around the bend here. This one is Chateau de Chantilly. That one is also beautiful. So if you're someone that loves Rose of Sharon, but you find that they just get too massive and a little bit too overwhelming and rambunctious, then you might want to consider growing one of them in a tree form.
That's a tip.
Okay, Stuart, here I'm getting into my beloved evergreen section. And here I'm starting to see more things in this form. These are Deodora cedars that are being trained, and these are 50% off, Stuart. What a deal. They were originally $80 and they're 50% off now. And look at these in this tall form. How gorgeous would these be to flank either side of your front door at Christmas time and lit up? And they've got this tall, if you can kind of focus on it, they've got just the tall single straight stem with the smaller head at the very top. So in this case, as distinctive from some of the other topiaries that I have grown, these have a much longer, taller trunk. Let's go around this way.
I've always been akin to the Dr. Seuss looking ones.
The Dr. Seuss
Yeah,
ones?
like very little,
the ones that
like
are
these guys, like
okay,
very little, right behind
Oh
you.
yeah, like this one
Like Charlie
that
Brown
is
tree,
just
basically.
is charmingly irregular. But of course, I like that one. But look at this one that really caught my eye. This is a little gem Norway spruce, and I just love that little tufted head on top of that long cane. I don't know what it is that I find so appealing about that. I'll have to deconstruct that in my head, the psychology of that, Stuart, and why I find that so appealing right now. Trying to remember to talk to the camera because when I look away, you can't hear me as well. Here's another example of this with an arborvitae. But oh my goodness, look at the selection of evergreens that they have. It's just spectacular. Now what I'm going to be on the hunt for, we're going to have to go sign some books here in a few minutes, Stuart, but what I'm going to be on the hunt for, I wonder if they have any ginkgo. Oh, look at this pretty Cryptomeria black dragon. I've grown some of this from Southern Living Plants in a different form.
If I spin slow, look how far away she gets.
Are you talking behind my back?
Never. There's no way you'd be able to play this back and hear what I said.
Look at these. Now, I have always loved these Hinoki false cypress. I have always loved them, but they don't love me because I have tried to grow them in the past and it just simply got too hot. And they just really, it says that they take full sun, but I found that they really just needed some protection. Maybe I just wasn't holding my mouth right when I tried to grow them. Or sometimes, quite frankly, if a plant dies on you, it's not necessarily your fault. It could be that it wasn't real healthy in cultivation. But that is definitely not a problem with these. And these are beautiful and spectacular.
Ooh, it gets hotter over here.
Of course, anything that we like big, we also like small. And this is that Blue Atlas cedar. I've got one of these off of my back porch. But look at how cute these are in this tiny form. And I think these would just be so wonderful temporarily in a container planting by your front door, even for a very brief period of time inside around the holidays. I love the way they look. It has that very Nordic quality in this kind of bluish green tone that is just lovely, and I would definitely pair it with lots of whites and other silvery colors to get kind of a winter snow effect. I think it would be really, really beautiful. Stuart, these smoke trees look like something that might appeal to you.
They're almost like hydrangea shaped, but just way thinner. Or maybe that's not bloomed, obviously. But yeah. Is this in bloom?
Lots of encores in the distance. Yes, these are in bloom.
That's what it
Yeah,
must have
yeah.
been. Okay.
And sometimes they'll bloom in purple, and it'll look like a purple haze, and the foliage will be purple.
In bloom, not in bloom. All right, turning slowly. And again.
Over here, hiding behind this Atlas cedar, is a blue star juniper. I have one of these in topiary form in my garden. I love this. I love the way it looks with this other blue Atlas cedar. And then coming around the bend here, Stuart, there's all sorts of different clipped junipers.
Oh, those are interesting.
Yeah, these are...
Have you ever done anything like that?
I haven't been real interested in this. A little bit of boxwood,
It's kinda cool.
in more of a cloud shape, but not so much that form. Though look at that one, it's in a pinwheel form. Isn't that interesting? How they've just cut out the center portion and allowed those laterals to grow. And then here's just a double ball juniper. This is mint julep. That's clever. And you'll find that how much these preformed topiaries are. Yes. How much these preformed topiaries are, a lot of it depends on what the plant material is. So, and that will probably be dictated by how fast growing the plant material is. So you might want to take that into consideration when you are looking for some that are already shaped and formed.
Silly question. Mm-hmm. What's like the most sections of like topiary balls on a, have you seen?
That I've seen?
Yeah, like,
I usually,
people get crazy
the
and go
most
way
you
up?
see are probably 3.
Okay.
There might be some that are more than that, but 3 is kind of my threshold. And then there's some wonderful spirals. The spirals have never been as appealing to me as just as a form, but some people really, really like them. And that's one of the things that makes all of our gardens distinctive. Stuart, let's kind of showcase some of these pots, and then I think we might need to head back to the table.
Yeah, we can come back and do more.
Yeah, look, I'm really loving all of those tall terracotta pots.
Getting there.
And those look like some of them that we saw yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll be able to point.
Oh, I like
in that
these giant
direction.
gray ones over here.
Aren't those incredible?
That's really neat. Something you see
Yeah,
outside
they've got
department
an
store.
industrial vibe to them.
Yeah, like a department store outside front tree. Kind of thing.
Stuart, we're gonna have to wrap this up.
All right, let's say bye to him. We'll come back.
Bye, we'll be back. Well, Stuart, we just had our very successful book signing here. It was so fun to see everybody in Tulsa, and I just wish we had more time to walk around this amazing garden center at Southwoods. It is just, oh my gosh, it's a wonderland. But back to our topic of topiary, they even have some pretty incredible faux topiary that looks fairly real. If you have a green thumb, they also have different, come this way, Stuart. I want to point out in this direction, not only do they have some amazing topiary and topiary candidates of all kinds of different plant material, but then they have amazing pots, really large pots, Italian pottery pots. Come over this way, Stuart, and we're not going to walk all that way, but I just want to give people a glimpse. If you can't find a certain shape of terracotta or Italian clay that you're looking for, well, then you need to come here. And this is just a smattering of all of the different kind of pots and saucers. There's pot feet, there's pot feet, there's all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and this is just a sampling. I think we passed some that were just really massive in another area of the center. Look at all of these different ones. So if you're looking for a really special container, I especially love this brown Italian clay here. But if you're looking for a special container for your topiary, here is, especially in the earth tones, here would be a great place to shop. And then finally, Stuart, you were asking me, had I ever seen anything more than a 3-ball topiary?
Yeah? Oh, wow, look at this.
Well, I don't know that And this isn't boxwood, this is Eugenia, which is not cold hardy or frost hardy, but look at that. Isn't that kind of fun and whimsical? And that is Dr. Seussish. It's Dr. Seussish. Yeah,
That's a good,
Dr.
I like
Seussish. I'm about to lose my voice. So, and then they just have, like, just do a kind of a panorama of what all there is to see here. Seasonal color, evergreens. They also have landscaping services. Their containers are incredible. House plants, you name it, they have got it. And definitely the next time we're in Tulsa, Stuart, we're going to come back here for me to do some serious shopping.
Sounds
But
good.
right now it's getting kind of hot and steamy, and we've got some stuff waiting in the car. So there you go. Stuart and I live at the Southwood Garden and Landscape Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Well, here you go. Here is my outfit of the day, and it's a very melted outfit at this point because we have been outside pretty much all morning, and it's a steamy afternoon now. My earrings these were from Ross, I believe. My sunglasses are just Ray-Ban aviators. My scarf I don't know where I got this scarf, but I like it. My dress is made well, and I typically have a scarf to throw over my shoulder or to wipe my sweaty brow when it gets really hot outside. So this is from Madewell. My shoes are from Nordstrom Rack, and my bracelets are just from different loved ones, and my gold watch belonged to my mother-in-law. Stuart, have I forgotten
I
anything?
don't think so. Let me get a look at the bracelets real quick.
Oh, yeah?
We kind of went quick.
Okay,
All
I have
right.
that. And look
Now
at this
I think
one.
I haven't
This
forgotten
one I'm
anything
about
either.
to lose. I need to clasp it. Well, there you go. There is your outfit of the day, and it's a good thing because I'm about to lose what little I have left of my voice, Stuart. We've done a lot of talking today. So there you go. There's your outfit of the day. Well, let's make some tabletop topiary today. Why not? You guys are frequently asking me how to transform a plain shrub from the nursery into a topiary form. And so I thought I would do that today, but a small version of that. These are perfect to do because they look wonderful as a centerpiece when you're starting to entertain and dine outdoors and you want an outdoorsy tablescape with a centerpiece that is living and growing. And this is just a really great candidate. Now, what do I look for when I go to my nursery? This one is, I guess I think of it as romancing the ordinary, because this is, you guys, about the most common plant you can get. It's an emerald and gold euonymus, small-leaved euonymus. And I liked this one because it has a strong trunk that's easily identifiable. And it also has good low branching, so I can remove some of those lower leaves, and it will have not only a topiary form, but kind of almost a bonsai form, bonsai-esque form. And so this was a beautiful candidate. Now, if I wanted to do just a regular ball, then a boxwood would be a great alternative. This is a green mountain boxwood, you guys. And though it looks similar to this, you can see that they really are distinctly different. So let me put this boxwood aside and let it be all about this euonymus. So I imagine when I pull this out of this pot, and I've watered it really well, not as well as I thought, this goes to show you guys that when you water, you really, and this would have been good to water from the bottom and sit in some water for a little while to ensure that I really got the entire root ball moistened, because you can see that there are still dry pockets. But what I'm going to do, obviously this is too tall for this container, which was gifted to me by some good friends. This is a cast stone container that I think is really beautiful, and it deserved something special in it. So what I'm going to have to do, obviously, is remove some of this bottom root growth. So what I'm going to do is loosen it up. Boy, this is really root bound. And I try typically not to buy plants that are too root bound, and when you're shopping, you can sometimes just gently pull it out of its pot, you know, just kind of loosen it and take a look at it. But what's important is before you plant it, that you really want to loosen up the root ball. Now you can see I'm being rather brutal with this, but I know that this is a tough plant. And I also want it to stay in this container, hopefully for a while. So I am going to root prune it because I don't necessarily want this to get bigger. Can you see how I'm pruning up the side too? I don't necessarily want this to grow fast in this container. I want it to stay small in stature, just diminutive in character. I'm going to reassess it now. Still too tall. Now what I could have also done, you guys, is I could have taken a serrated old bread knife, which is a wonderful tool. It's also something to look for if you go thrifting. Look for an old serrated knife, or look in your kitchen for an old serrated knife that you could use, because it would make quick work of this. I kind of wanted to show you more what I was doing. See how I'm just semi-torturing this whip ball, and then what I can do is kind of splay that root zone out so it's growing horizontally. So I'm going to remove a little bit more of that. And then what I'm going to do, you guys, is loosen up the sides. So it will not continue to grow in a circle, but it will escape. And these roots will then travel and grow into the surrounding soil. Now I've got some new soil that I'm going to plant this in. It does not, I'm not going to add any supplemental fertilizer to it. I'm not going to add any Osmocote or anything like that, because again, I don't want to encourage too much growth on this. I want it to stay small and not grow too fast. So there we go. And once I plant it, it will settle a little bit. So let me move this out of the way. And typically in this case, you may wonder, why didn't she prune it first? Because everything is relative to everything else. So the way this plant looks is going to relate to the container itself. And so I am going to prune it accordingly. And this is a good potting soil, but it does not have any additional fertilizer. You know, you can sometimes buy potting soils that have added fertilizer. This does not. It's just a good quality fertilizer. And when I do fertilize this plant, I'll use a kind of liquid organic. Now, obviously, I will water this in well. This, because I like the look of this clean earth, I probably won't mulch it in gravel or mulch it with much of anything. I'll just wait and see on that. Tuck it down in here, and then of course I'm going to water it really well and keep it in a semi-shaded place while it is adapting to its container. So now let's do this, you guys. I'm getting ready to also pot up this beautiful cast stone. This was an estate sale find with some Mountain Frost Pink Pom-Pom Dianthus. But right now I'm going to use this as a stand to put this on so it's at eye level. So I can show you how it comes together. And what I'm going to do, you can see here, Stuart, if you can kind of capture that, where I'm starting to clip off some things, because what I'm wanting to do, I don't want a standard poodle form on this, you guys. What I'm looking for is just the clear lines of the trunk itself. So I'm pruning some things that will expose that trunk. And again, this is about one of the most ordinary plants you can get. And what this does is it then simulates the look of a small tree. And it must be because we just like things that are small and dollhouse-like maybe. But I think that might be part of the attraction of topiary, and maybe even bonsai in general, is it speaks to the child in us. Stuart, are you able to capture my cuts? I think you are. And on this, what I might want is for it to be a little bit asymmetrical. Now I think I've got right in here, Stuart, can you show from this side? You can see that I've got a branch right in here that's kind of growing straight up. And I don't know that I want that there. So I'm going to remove it. And that will not only, again, expose more of the trunk, but it's also opening up the canopy a little bit. I've got this one here as well, and I think I'm going to leave it, but let it start moving downwards. And a lot of this, there is a certain amount of artistry to this, you guys. You just leave what you want and take off what you want until it's visually appealing to you. And if you make a wrong cut or something, it will grow out. And eventually, I try to get as close as I can so that I don't leave any nubs at the end. Let me look at it from this side. How's that looking, Stuart? Okay, now you'll notice in here, if you can come down from the top, you'll see that there is some really thick growth. See that right there? That's really thick and maybe is more thick than I want from how the top appearance is. So I'm going to trim that out again to open up that canopy a little bit. Ooh, and I'm liking the way it's got this kind of cascading form. I hope you guys can see that. Stuart, can you see that? That it looks, did you nod with the camera? Stuart's laughing at me. Stuart is always laughing at me. Okay, but it does look good, doesn't it? Yes. This one would be pretty with some really striking black stones or something. But again, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm just going to expose those canes. Now, I really like the way this is turning out. Now, if you saw this in a florist or in a nursery, it was already trimmed, I promise you it would be considerably more expensive. Look at how beautiful it looks from that side. Am I getting your A-okay? So this, you guys, is really how you just transform a simple shrub into something that is just a little more special and bonsai-esque. Clipping a gold small-leaved euonymus, emerald and gold, into a beautiful container. And I'll show you how I'm going to stage it a little bit later. Voila.